Let's make a function that simulates a lucky draw for the new and shiny game consoles in the market. What we want to do is declare an array of strings that holds all our game consoles, which looks something like this. To do that, we type in string followed by the square bracket, which means that we are creating an array of strings, and then the name of our array, in this case game console, followed by equals and the curly brackets, and inside that we list all the values we want to store. Then say we want to pick a certain value in the array. We just go ahead and say system.out.println and then game console of index 2. So we are basically pointing to the string of index 2, which is going to be Xbox Series X. So the first thing to do is to declare an array and set the values inside the array for all the consoles. Now because we want this to be a lucky draw, we want this to be randomly pick a console. So we use math.random as we have used earlier to generate random number for us. Just like we did before, we will generate a random number and store it into the double variable lucky. So we go double lucky equals math.random. Remember that this generates a random number between 0 and 1. So we need to multiply that by 6 to get a fractional number between 0 and 6, which is the number of consoles we have. Remember that lucky times equals 6 is just multiplying lucky by 6 and updating itself with the new value. And then we want to cast that variable into an integer so that we don't get a fractional number anymore, but we get a whole integer number, and that's between 0 and 5. The way we do casting is we just write the type that we want to cast it to between brackets just before the variable name here. And then we can store that in an integer called lucky index. So now we end up with this lucky index variable that is between 0 and 5. And it is an integer, so we can access any particular part of the array. So the last thing we want to do is to print out the name of the console which was randomly picked. So we go ahead and say system.out.println and then we say game console square brackets lucky index. So based on the random number that was generated, this lucky index can be anything between 0 and 5. So we randomly pick one of those and display it in the print screen. Let's trace a few examples and see what's happening. Assume that math.random generated a random number that's equal to 0.435. The first thing we do is we multiply it by 6, making it 2.61. And then we cast it into an integer, throwing away the fractional part so that it becomes just 2. So our lucky index is 2, and the last line just prints out game console of 2. And what is game console of 2? It's Xbox Series X. If our random number that was generated was 0.125, so that's in lucky, we'll multiply that by 6, giving us 0.75. And then we cast that into an integer, so we throw away the fractional part giving us 0. And then we print out game console of 0, which happens to be PlayStation 5. The same happens for any value that is generated for our variable lucky, because we multiply it by 6 and then cast it into an integer. So there we go.